by the end of the night. A cold night for all, especially for Scotland, could even see lows down to -8 or -10 in a few spots. And then Monday itself, once we lose this rain, really it's a day of sunny spells and a few wintry showers. And that theme then continues into Tuesday and Wednesday. Widespread frost by night and the further risk of some snow at times.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national in Iran. Ali Reza Akbari was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Britain. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the sanctions underline our disgust at the killing, which Rishi Sunak described as callous and cowardly. Meanwhile, Iran's state media is reporting that the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry over what it describes as London's meddling in national security. A union representing ambulance workers has written to the Prime Minister saying they feel betrayed by attempts to paint them as uncaring. GMB, which represents more than 10,000 ambulance staff, told Rishi Sunak he was demonising them over strike action. It comes after Mr Sunak told the Commons that industrial action was terrifying the public. Tory MP Lee Anderson told GB News the letter may not reflect the views of workers.
Well, there's a distinction here, Phil, and you know this, between ambulance drivers and ambulance unions. You know, I've spent times a shift with ambulance drivers, and they, you know, sometimes they tell me a different story to what the unions are telling them. It's about time we started listening to the ambulance drivers and the paramedics rather than the unions, who we know have got one single agenda, and that's to get rid of us.
Meanwhile, nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will now continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. RCN General Secretary Pat Cullen credits pressure from nurses as being key to negotiations. Rishi Sunak has spoken of his ambition to send a squadron of British tanks to help Ukraine take back territory lost to Russian forces. Speaking with President Zelensky this morning, he pledged to supply Challenger 2 battle tanks alongside additional artillery systems. The decision makes the UK the first Western power to supply main battle tanks to the country. Labour says the government has its fullest backing for sending military aid to Ukraine. Plans to house 400 asylum seekers in a small village near Northampton have now been dropped by the Home Office. Residents had objected to using the 17th century Highgate House Hotel in Cretan, which has a population of just over 500. James Hill is the chairman of Cretan Parish Council. He told us why residents were against the scheme.
We're a village of 520 people, and the prospect of 400 people coming to live here without occupation or activities to keep them occupied, without proper access to local services, we felt that was unsustainable for us as a community and also for the local area.
Ministers are set to review guidance given to landlords who rent out social housing following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December 2020 after developing a respiratory condition caused by mould. Rochdale Boroughwide Housing, which owned the flat, had previously advised his parents to paint over it. Michael Gove says every landlord in the country needs to ensure their tenants are housed in decent homes. Hormone replacement therapy could help prevent Alzheimer's disease in women, that's according to new research. The therapy helps control the symptoms of menopause and provides better memory and cognitive function for women who carry the Alzheimer's gene. Professor June Andrews is a dementia expert, and she told us it's too early to know how significant this could be.
Although the research indicates that there's some kind of link there, there's not anything yet to say that taking HRT is really going to prevent dementia. If it was going to prevent dementia, that would be really important. But the thing is, there's a chance that it might be associated with a reduction. And when you consider that taking HRT does present some risks and it has some side effects, it wouldn't be worth taking it just solely to prevent dementia.
And the government says single-use plastic plates, trays and cutlery will be banned in England from October in a bid to curb the impact of plastic on the environment. At the moment, England uses around 2.7 billion pieces of single-use cutlery per year, and only 10% is recycled. Repeated breaches of the new legislation could lead to retailers and food vendors facing criminal charges. Dr. Christian Dunn, a senior lecturer at Natural Sciences at Bangor University, told us why the ban is necessary. We'll hear from him just a little bit later. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
So good afternoon. It's just gone 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Oh, God, it is so bad. I tried to watch Harry's interview with Tom Bradbury last week.
I don't think that if I was still part of the institution that I would have been given this chance to. So I'm actually really grateful that I've had the opportunity to tell my story, because it's my story to tell.
Oh, God. It's 5 minutes in, this thing with Prince Harry. I'll be honest, I'm so bored.
Once I started driving myself, and the occasions, which there were multiple, of driving back into London from being in the country over a weekend, I would have paparazzi literally jump on the bonnet of the car, and I physically couldn't see anything.
So Prince Harry really hates the paparazzi.
I needed to see, but removing the stuff.
34 minutes in, I've gone to get some food. It's so boring. Sorry. Oh, no, it's gone for a break. 34 minutes in, Prince Harry's managed to make peace, he said, and that he's sort of happy. Yeah, it looks at me. It looks at you still sort of whinging about the past. You've not made peace with anything. It's just, it's interminable. He's talking about the same thing again and again and again. I'm just so bored.
A couple of things. You talk about accountability. In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well,
the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they're racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
there was concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
Right.
I'm going to eat my wig.
So again, going back to the difference between what my understanding is, because of my own experience, the difference between racism and unconscious bias, the two things are different. But once it's been acknowledged or pointed out to you as an individual or as an institution that you have unconscious bias, you therefore have an opportunity to learn and grow from that in order so that you are part of the solution rather
I want to... Well, anyway, never mind. It's almost as though Harry has forgotten the Oprah interview. Well, just in case, here's a refresher.
There are several conversations.
There's a conversation with you.
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Yes, the American press ran with their comments and pretty much backed Meghan. The usual race baiters like Dr. Scholar jumped on the bandwagon, and in the end, the Queen issued a statement. Recollections may vary, and William said, "We are not a racist family." But Harry stayed silent. And what did he say about the Ngozi Fulani affair?
I'm very happy for Ngozi Fulani to be invited into the palace to sit down with Lady Susan Hussey and to reconcile. Because Meghan and I love Susan Hussey. I think she's great. And I also know that what she meant, she never meant any harm at all.
Again, not a peep from Harry and Meghan, until now. Some 22 months later, when Harry is promoting his book, which within the first few pages he's pointed out that William is balding and losing his similarities to Diana, a 50-bedroom palace where he whinges about having to share a room with his brother, and in another instance in Balmoral Castle, complaining about getting the smaller and not-so-nice half. I'm afraid all this book has revealed is just how much the palace has protected you, Harry, from yourself. We would never have known about the drug-taking, the personal stories that were not really his to share, and the true extent of what, in my view, is his narcissism and, frankly, envy of his brother. And today's papers are still full of it. On the front page of The Telegraph, Prince Harry says, "There's enough for another book. I cut the memoir in half to spare my family," pardon the pun. He says he's edited out the revelations because they wouldn't forgive me, claiming that he felt responsibility to reform the monarchy for the sake of George, Charlotte and Louis. How considerate of him. He says, "I know that out of those 3 children, at least one will end up like me, the spare, and it hurts and worries me." Apparently, Harry wants to fix things. He said this is not about trying to collapse the monarchy, really, and that if people had listened when he had raised the alarm, they wouldn't be in this position. He told them to come clean and then we can move on. A veiled threat, if ever I did hear one. Prince Harry, it would appear, seems to think that although his family might not like him at the moment, they would thank him in a few years' time. Dream on, Harry. I predict that you'll be back, cap in hand, and I'll be there to say, "I told you so." Oh, we're back. Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Shamima left this country for Syria to join the so-called Islamic State group when she was just, I think, 15. She married an ISIS fighter and gave birth to, well, and lost 3 children. But despite languishing in a Syrian jail and being stripped of her British citizenship, because she was deemed a national security risk by the government, the publicly funded BBC have given her a very own 10-part podcast. Are they wrong to do this? Then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Joining me live, the YouTube sensation, the body language guy, Jesus Enriquez Regras, and also Angela Levin will be discussing all things royal. Angela will be breaking down Prince Harry's exclusive Telegraph interview, and Jesus will be analysing Harry's body language in that ghastly ITV interview where Harry continues to plead for privacy, yet still washes his dirty laundry in public. Then, stay with me, at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Major Mike Shearer will be live in the studio. He's a former soldier. He presided over the armoured wing of the armoured fighting vehicle, and apparently, I have it on good authority that he taught Prince Harry and Prince William how to fire arms. He'll be discussing royals fighting in the armed forces and Harry's ever-changing behaviour. And then stay with me, because there's even more. Boris Johnson's environmentalist father, Stanley Johnson, will be with me at 5:50, alongside physicist and engineer Brian Catt. And they'll go head-to-head. I'll be asking, is net zero a scam? That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think, as ever, on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, so let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, I'm going to come straight to you, Lizzie, first, because I know, Lizzie, that did you buy the book?
I actually didn't buy it.
Well done, very good.
I didn't buy it. I know you saw an Instagram post and you wrote to me, did you buy it? I refused to buy it, and I don't want to buy it because it's not any truths as far as I know. It's full of grubby tales about his genitalia that got frostbite or frost nip, and so many inaccuracies and untruths. And I'm sorry, he has committed treason. He is so lucky that his father is on the throne and isn't Henry VIII or Elizabeth I, because his head would be on a chopping block, and honestly, he would be finished for good. It is disgusting what he's doing. Please stop, Harry. We all have had enough of this.
If they come clean, which to me is like a Veltri, if you come clean, then I'll stop with my behaviour. Well, actually, what they should do is carry on being quiet, because what you find with people like that is they'll go further and further and further and further. So let's see how far he'll go. What do you think, sir?
I mean, first of all, what does he mean, come clean? Come clean about what? I mean, obviously he's making peace, but he's actually making pieces of 8 here more than anything else. I think I do feel sorry for him. I think that he's been in this bubble and he's had all of these things happen to him, and he's lived this glorious life, and it isn't the life that he expected it to be. And then whatever happened with him and Meghan, he's lashing out at everybody, lashing out at the media, lashing out at his family, and by all accounts, all it seems that Charles and William ever did was try to stop bad stories. And Harry's just got it in his head, and they were polite. Camilla, can you imagine
the
Camilla
wicked
sat on the phone going, "Oh, hello, the sun," come
It's
on.
like Cinderella in reverse, isn't it? It really is. But can we deal with facts that we deal with? Yeah. And Harry's saying, oh, they have to apologise to Meghan. Well, let's just remember, 34 million spent on the wedding, 1 million on wardrobe. They have their own security, home, overseas, travel, holidays. They had her own staff. The Queen gave her own staff to help Meghan. Actually,
Lady Susan Hussey,
you know what?
Who they love, despite her apparent racist tendencies.
Has Harry forgotten that Prince William also lost his mother on the same day, at the same time?
Well, that's the thing, though. He says often in the book, like, it makes it sound like he's the only one that lost Diana, or he's the only one that's lost the Queen, as in, like, no one feels it like him. But William is in exactly the same position. He lost his mum. He lost his grandma. We've all lost the Queen.
Exactly.
So, I mean, like, you don't feel it harder than the rest of us, Harry. I'm sorry.
Well, I think they should get rid of him from the Invictus Games because he's caused a security threat.
But that's his baby, though,
But he has
really
betrayed the British forces, the military. He really has by his behaviour.
Some people would say that he has his right to tell his own story, and everyone else has been telling the story. story on his behalf, so therefore he is doing it. But, you know, if you're going to do that, you have to accept the consequences, whilst I respect his right to be able to do that. And all credit to him for doing that. The other side of it is you're going to throw people under the bus. Be careful when the bus reverses.
He doesn't think that he's throwing them on the bus.
No,
That's the thing. And he's held so much back already. I mean, what the hell has he held back? That's even worse.
I actually think that's more of a veiled threat, though. You know, when someone says, I've got more.
I've got more in my bag.
I've got more. I mean, what's it going to be called? Prince of Clowns. Everyone is laughing at him and across the pond. And that awful shows he's been doing in America, where they had the trumpets going and he walked in. There's Tom Hanks, you know, walked in, and it was making a mockery. He's making a pantomime of the royal family.
I love the bit where he was asked about Tom Bradbury's face when Tom Bradbury went, huh? Racism because I mean he's...
and a lot of people who, you know, were on his side when he was talking about the racism are now going, but wait, hang on, I thought there was racism. They just got an award for showing it.
On a serious note, he let our dear Queen die thinking that there was a racist in the royal family as well as Prince Philip. Why didn't he put it right? He had 2 years to put it right and he didn't.
And I can safely say that, and I watched one of those sort of race-baited type characters on a show actually saying, yeah, they're liars.
No.
And she was a Black Lives Matter. She's one of the people from Black Lives Matter, and even they're saying, because you can't, it's gaslighting if you're allowing people to make the so-called preconception that it's racism, which it was by all accounts. And actually, unconscious bias is a form of, if you want to do it, racism anyway. But everybody has an unconscious bias, and it's a natural thing that your body is there to protect you. So you go to things that are similar to you. It's learnt from the womb.
But like you said in your monologue, though, why wasn't he saying anything about Lady Susan? Why wasn't he saying about Lady Susan Hussey when it was on the front page of every single newspaper? When it was, you know, on CNN, it was on NBC, it was everywhere over the world. So why wasn't Meghan piping up and saying? Why wasn't Meghan piping up and saying, "Oh my God, I love Lady Susan Hussey"?
But surely they should sack their therapists. I'd say in plural because they've obviously had many. Because he's saying, "Don't talk about my wife." Yet he's talking about his father, his father's wife, his brother. He's
not going to stop unless they come clean. Well, you're going to keep having to do this, Harry, and the lower down the barrel you go, unfortunately, you go underneath that barrel. It's not good. It's a very bad look.
It's a bad look.
But anyway, what are your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Get in touch. You know the coup. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, stay tuned because on the way, the body language expert and YouTube sensation Jesus Enriquez Rosas will be discussing Harry's body language and in those terrible interviews, all of that. But next, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, were the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet GB News at GB News. I've got a poll up right now on Twitter asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Cast your vote now, but let's get an update with the weather.
Hello there, I'm Craig Snell, and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, after we lose the wind and rain today, a change is on the way. It's going to start to turn a good deal colder for all of us, with an increase in risk of snow, especially as we go into next week. Here's the situation, however, at the moment, still got low pressure dominating the British Isles and tightly packed isobars across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England, indicating some very windy weather still as we go through the rest of Saturday. Otherwise, as we go into tonight, a mixture of clear spells and showers for a lot of England and Wales. We do have this band of rain and hill snow just sinking its way into parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England as the night goes on. But for Scotland, it turns clearer, colder, risk of some further snow showers and also some ice on untreated surfaces. So overall, Sunday's going to be a cold day for all of us, really. We'll continue to track this band of rain and hill snow across England and Wales, weakening as it does so. Behind it, plenty of sunshine, still the risk of some wintry showers for Scotland and quite a keen wind here. So feeling very cold, highs struggling around 2 to 4 degrees here for the afternoon. Further south, around where we should be for the time of year, but certainly feeling a bit colder than what we have been used to. And then into the evening, we start to see bands of rain and showers moving in from the west. As it bumps into the colder air, we could see some sleet and snow, especially across parts of Wales and the Midlands. And then later on in the night, we're just keeping a very close eye on this band of rain. It may just move into parts of southeast England, even giving some sleet and snow to the high ground here by the end of the night. A cold night for all, especially for Scotland. Could even see lows down to -8 or -10 in a few spots. And then Monday itself, once we lose this rain, really it's a day of sunny spells and a few wintry showers. And that theme then continues into Tuesday and Wednesday. Widespread frost by night and the further risk of some snow at times.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's just coming up to 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. You can also stream us live on YouTube. Now, before the break, we were discussing, or we were talking about this situation with Prince Harry. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Angie says, if you want to be really bored, you should watch the Anderson Cooper interview as well. There again, the questions and answers are virtually identical. Talk about controlling the narrative. I wonder how long it took Harry to practice and remember the answers. Yeah, well, I think, to be honest with you, Tom Bradbury must feel quite embarrassed, especially that bit where he was asked the question with regard to the race. And Harry came up with racism. You can literally see Tom's face go, you're throwing me under the bus as well. Dan says, great monologue. But one question remains, Nana. Why does Harry feel his opinion about anything matters to anyone outside the wokies? Exactly. Albert says, hi, Nana. With that yellow outfit, you look an easy spring daffodil. Thank you. With Harry and Meghan, and my concerns are that on the day of the King's coronation, Harry and Meghan will do something to spoil the historic day, so watch this space. Well, you know what? They will probably try, but, hey, what can we do? They're just, they're just going to hang about like a bad smell. Right now, it is time for our Great British Debate This Hour, and I'm asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Now, the BBC have come under fire for releasing a podcast centred around the former ISIS bride, Shamima Begum. Critics have said that she shouldn't have been given a mainstream media platform to share her tale of when she fled East London in 2015 to join the terror organisation in Syria as a teenager. So back in 2019, former Home Secretary Sajid Javid stripped Begum of her citizenship on the grounds that she is a threat to national security. Now, supporters would claim that she was groomed by ISIS, whilst others would dub her a traitor who knowingly and willingly joined a death cult. But the BBC have insisted that the series is a robust public interest investigation. So, do you think Shamima Begum should have been given a platform? Or is this just a waste of licensed payers' money? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Baby a podcast? Right, I'm joined now by former editor of The Labelist, Peter Edwards, political commentator Emma Webb, reality TV star and commentator Nana Akua, Conservative councillor Claire Pearsall. Welcome, all of you. Thank you very much for joining me. Right, I'm going to start with you, Narinda. Why not? Why should we pay the licence fee to pay to someone who's been a terrorist, who was a terrorist bride? Narinda.
Well, firstly, I just want to say that Joshua Baker, the journalist involved in this, has said this podcast is not her podcast. This is their podcast, and it's a forensic investigation into the how and why. And I think, why would the BBC are actually doing a public service here? Because they're confronting Begum. Because as a criminal justice system in the UK, we certainly didn't do that. We shrugged off our responsibilities to a British national to someone else. And I think this is a great investigation.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you there. Listen, if you commit a crime in America, what happens to you in America? You get arrested in America. You don't come to the UK. And if you do something in another country, they are within their rights. No, hang on. I listened. They're within their rights to punish you within that country. So the fact that she's there, I don't think that should be really a question. But
Nana, she was 15 years old. She's an underage girl, and she was groomed and coerced into, by all intentions, sex trafficked. And why does nobody have any sympathy for this? I am just shocked. There's no sympathy. What she did was no good.
Well, because what you're saying is speculation and not necessarily fact. Let's go to Claire Pearsall.
Those doors.
Claire.
She shouldn't have been given a platform like this. And just to follow on from what Narinda has said, if the BBC wanted to do a forensic look at people being groomed, then why not give a platform to those grooming victims within the UK whose stories can't get across, who aren't being heard, aren't being believed? I think that is vastly more important. I think that the fact that she was 15 will worry some people, but she knew what she was doing. You cannot say that she had no idea. She was a
girls in the grooming gangs who were 15 years old. They've been forgiven.
Hang on, let her finish, Narinda. Sorry, carry on, Claire.
All of the reports from her school said that she was smart. And when you hear her, as we have numerous times now in different interviews, you get a different version of Shamima, depending upon who she is talking to. She is controlling that narrative. And realistically, what about the victims of places like the Manchester Arena bomb that she didn't have any sympathy for? Where is their volume on, for their voices to be heard? Because I'm not hearing it. I don't wish to see her.
Well, I'm going to go take that to Peter Edwards. Peter, what are your thoughts? I mean, Claire's making them a very valid point there. We seem to be focusing on somebody who's, for all counts, potentially committed terrorist atrocities.
We're all horrified by terrorism. I think we're all horrified by extremism, and I think there's a legitimate journalistic inquiry and interviewing someone involved in this. When Anthony Lloyd, the Times war reporter, tracked her down to a refugee camp and had a world exclusive, I don't believe he was accused of providing her with a platform or being woke. So I think we've got to be quite reasoned and cautious in how we speak about this. None of us want to defend her actions, but we put them in context, and the context is of someone who was at the time of leaving the UK, and this is not to defend her, but just state a fact, was legally a child.
Yeah, but it was on the BBC's, what was the thing, whether somebody could investigate it, but why should we as the licence fee payers be paying for something like that? Emma Webb.
I'm all for journalistic interest in the story, but this podcast is not what that is. This is the second series of a podcast called I'm Not a Monster. It has a clear spin to it. The first series actually looks at a lady in the United States who went over to join Islamic State with her family. This is the second series of that. And it's quite clear that in this particular instance, this is an ongoing situation, unlike as was the case with the United States, where this is going to create sympathy for people and to help her case and to try and persuade the British public to change their opinion and to allow her back. Even if the BBC do a thorough investigative piece of journalism on this, they're still not going to have the information that the Home Secretary had when he decided to strip her of her citizenship. So this is not something that we should be using public money for, to try and convince the public that this girl is not a monster when she chose to go knowingly to join a terrorist organisation.
Well, Narinda, come in on that then. Yeah.
I just want to say that this isn't to help Shamima. This is about her. In fact, if anything, I'd say the BBC are exploiting her. This isn't going to help. It's going to cause weaponise even more hostility towards Begum. I can't understand. No one here is agreeing. No one here. We all agree that it's a terrible ISIS group. We do not support terrorism. However, the girl was 15 years old.
So the
same
point?
girl's Claire, by the way, whether she's smart or not, she's still under
you know, we've got that. But it's the BBC are doing it. Look, if ITV want to do an investigation into her and pay for it and all that, that's up to them. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't support it. But if it's I'm a licence payer. Hang on. I'm a licence payer. Why should I pay for that? I don't want to pay for that. She's not even a British citizen. She's been stripped of that.
As a mother to a 15-year-old daughter, I think online grooming, I'd really want to know. I would want to know the how and why. How a 15-year-old girl, my daughter's 15, and the seriousness of that.
No. I want to know why she's done what she's done. It's not acceptable. Who wants to come in on this? Last person, 30 seconds. I'll give it to... Yeah, go on, Emma Webb.
You know, all you have to do is listen to the first episode of this documentary. There are going to be many installments of this to hear how softball this is. This is trying to clearly create sympathy for her. It's not robust. It is going completely soft on her. And the way that it portrays her is exactly the narrative that she has clearly wanted to spin to try and create favour for her appeal to come back to the United States, to the United Kingdom, which would potentially put people at risk. What I would like to see is for the BBC to pay similar attention, to put British public money into investigating what happened to the Yazidis and the sex slaves in the state that she contributed to building.
Well, thank you so much. And also perhaps do some more stuff on Rotherham as well. Listen, thank you so much. Peter Edwards, former editor of the Labour List, also political commentator Emma Webb, Lorinda Kerr, reality TV star, and Claire Pearce, the Conservative councillor. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate. And I'm asking, were the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. Broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Then stay with me at 5. It's this week's difficult conversation. I'll be joined by former military spokesperson Major Mike Shearer. He was a former career soldier and has served all over the world. And in 2006, he presided over the armoured wing of the Armoured Fighting Vehicle, where he commissioned officers of Royal Armoured Corps and Household Cavalry to go for their special to arms training and how to learn to fight a turret of light tank. He'll be discussing the Royals serving, because apparently he knew Harry and William, and he trained them as well. So first, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 4:34. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national in Iran. Ali Reza Akbari was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Britain. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the sanctions underline the government's disgust at the killing, which Rishi Sunak has described as callous and cowardly. Meanwhile, Iran's state media is reporting that the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, who are accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. A union representing ambulance workers has written to the Prime Minister saying they feel betrayed by attempts to paint them as uncaring. GMB, which represents more than 10,000 ambulance staff, told Rishi Sunak he was demonising them over strike action. It comes after Mr Sunak told the Commons that industrial action was terrifying the public. Rishi Sunak has spoken of his ambition to send a squadron of British tanks to help Ukraine take back territory lost to Russian forces. Speaking with President Volodymyr Zelensky this morning, he pledged to supply Challenger 2 battle tanks alongside additional artillery systems. The decision makes the UK the first Western power to supply main battle tanks to the country. Labour says the government has its fullest backing for sending military aid to Ukraine. And plans to house 400 asylum seekers in a small village near Northampton have now been dropped by the Home Office. Residents had objected to using the 17th century Highgate House Hotel in Cretan, which has a population of just over 500. James Hill is the chairman of Cretan Parish Council. He told us why residents were against the scheme.
We're a village of 520 people, and the prospect of 400 people coming to live here without occupation, or activities to keep them occupied without proper access to local services. We felt that was unsustainable for us as a community and also for the local area.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. We'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So welcome back. It is fast approaching 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And don't forget, you can download our GB News app where you can check out all the programmes here on the channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's now time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Now, the BBC have come under fire for releasing a podcast centred around the former ISIS bride Shamima Begum. And critics have said that she shouldn't have been given a mainstream media platform to share her tale of when she fled East London to join the terror organisation in Syria as a teenager in 2015. But the BBC have insisted that the series is a robust public interest investigation. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by broadcaster and journalist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, Sam, I'm going to start with you. What do you think? Were they wrong? What are they doing? Why are they giving her something to say?
Well, first of all, we have to recognise the fact that it's not, she's not on Instagram going, I got a podcast, nah. Do you know what I mean? She's actually talking about what happened, and I think that it's important to hear what she has to say because it might help other people recognise the signs of being groomed online. Because
well, she didn't really start talking about the grooming until somebody sort of dropped it in that it could be an option. I haven't heard her say, "Oh, people forced me to."
But it's a super weird thing as well because Andrew Drury, the guy who went over and interviewed her when she was 19 and she was in the refugee camp and she was still saying ISIS nonsense. He was like, oh, she keeps changing her story like this way, that way, and in the podcast, he's like, well, that's not what she said to me. So I think it's important to get we need to get where her head is.
He said that he was sucked in by her initially, and now he realises that.
Well, I don't think she's some sort of criminal mastermind that could.
Well, she is actually, Sam, because she entered Syria to join the Islamic State, and I'm sorry, she is a traitor. She's a terrorist.
I don't deny that.
What is so interesting on her story, because all she's trying to do is trying to get back in, and she's not fooling anyone. She's certainly not fooling me. And the BBC are exploiting us because who's paying for it?
But I think the BBC,
we are.
I think the BBC are stupid enough to think that this is some sort of platform for her to try and get back to the UK, and that's the only reason. This is in public interest.
But it's called
a massive
I Am
story.
Not a Monster. So
Yeah.
already they've positioned her as somebody who is not a monster.
That's
so
the
they are
title,
now,
though.
yeah, but well, that's the title. But that means that they are inviting us to accept that narrative that she is not a monster and hear her, but from that perspective that I am not a monster. So they have
she's a terrorist.
Yeah, I get it, but it's anything
and
like...
she's stateless, deservedly so, and it would cost us, the taxpayer, fortunes to monitor if she came back to this country. Do you realise that? What is interesting about what she's got to say? How about the victims?
Isn't it more important to try and get into somebody's head and to think about why they went there to begin with?
So
she went
what?
of her own volition, but she was groomed, she was trafficked.
No,
she
that's
went
what
and
you're saying. We don't know that.
She lost 3 babies. I find it interesting. So therefore, it is in public interest.
What benefit do we get by knowing why?
Exactly.
None whatsoever. She did it because sometimes
it could stop young girls. It could stop it happening in the future.
When I was young, I used to say to my mum, "Why? Why?" And she'd say, "Because why's got a long tail." Basically, because some things there is no answer to. People do things where there's no reasoning to it. And I think it's just a situation she found herself in. She went along with it. She got taken in by it all. But that doesn't excuse the behaviour.
And
that doesn't mean
say
it shouldn't be
50
public.
years old. It's not like you're smoking behind the bike sheds at school. She went to join the Islamic State.
I get it.
She was an intelligent girl. She had a choice.
But
let's see what Sam has to say.
I think she was obviously lonely at the time. She was in a scenario whereby there was something missing in her life. So surely it's better to look at where in her part of the world where she was living, what it was missing with these girls that they were so easy to be plucked and taken to ISIS. Where like it could enhance our understanding of how it can happen.
She does not deserve a platform, Sam, in any shape or form.
But this is the channel that always talks about not deplatforming.
The Islamic State of Iraq, who caused horrific...
Nobody's saying deplatform. We're saying that does she deserve one for what she's done? And in particular, does she deserve a taxpayers or a funded platform that we, as a licence fee payer, I'm paying that thing and I'm expecting them to show me neutrality. I don't want to hear something that starts off telling me that she's not a monster. And that's not neutral. I think for me that shows a bias already. It sets a precedent and it is now pre-programming me to believe that she's not a monster.
Yeah, but as I said, that is just the title. I think in order.
That's the title.
In order to get obviously a good measure of it, we'd have to listen to the entire.
But the fact is that is the title.
Yes,
which is totally.
And we're talking about it now, which obviously means they picked the right title.
No, it means that I'm not happy with my licence fee money going to things like that.
But she's not getting paid, though, is she?
And the BBC are exploiting us, and I'm happy to rip up my TV licence. Honestly, I'm absolutely disgusted they've given her this platform.
Because she's been so disgraced in this way, and I understand that we want to hear a balanced view and a story, but not hers. And not if me, as a licence fee payer, are paying it. I just feel that there are things that, yes, the BBC... I'd like to see the BBC doing global things and bringing us news globally, but not shamed people who've been shamed and being thrown out of this country to hear them almost begging to come back.
Exactly.
But this is a story that we all know about. It was obviously quite a few years ago, and it is super interesting. Like for example, you had Andrew Tate on this channel, and he's currently trying to answer for whatever crimes he's done.
But hang on, wait.
This is very different.
He hasn't been...
But it's about listening to people.
But hold on, let's just roll back on that.
Let's not compare it to Andrew Tate. It's very different.
First of all, that's under investigation. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet, as far as we know. And so that is really not for us to be judging that right now.
No, of course, and I'm not judging that at all. I'm just saying that there are people, that potentially have done bad things.
But we didn't know... This is after the event, though. We don't know that, though. And this is after the event in any case, but we don't know that.
But we know what she's doing. We know what she's doing. She's a calculating girl. She's spinning the hard luck story. I'm the victim, to come back to live in this country, which would then cost us, the taxpayers, loads of money to monitor her because she's a terrorist. Would you want her living next door to you?
She's not a terrorist anymore, though, is she?
Oh, please, we'd have to monitor her. And then the high cost of living at the minute. At the high cost of living at the minute, Sam.
Retribution, surely. Aren't people allowed to speak about it?
You can speak about it, but not on the BBC. That's all I'm saying. Well, listen, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Right, where should we head over to this week? Bristol. We're going to Bristol. I love Bristol. I love Bristol. Lee Harris, he's great, isn't he? Lee joining us now live is Lee Harris. Lee, right, what do you think? Remember Begum podcast, I'm Not a Monster on the BBC. What's your view?
I completely agreed with what you were just saying, Nana. I think it's utterly ridiculous. Yet again, they are massively out of touch with the public, which has been an ongoing theme with the BBC. So, the ongoing ultra-woke lefty groupthink that has infested the BBC. It's also a shocking insult to all the British people killed by ISIS, including an 8-year-old girl at Manchester Arena, along with 22 other people whose killing Begum said was justified. It's a distasteful, woke waste of licence fee payers' money. And I suspect if they actually asked BBC viewers, they probably would prefer money to be spent elsewhere. I did listen to the first episode before I came on, and you're absolutely right. This is not a forensic look at what happened at all. It's deliberately designed for you to feel sympathy for it. And I'm sorry, Nana, I don't, and I never will.
No, me neither. Thank you very much, Lee Harris. Very succinct, of course, as ever. Lovely to talk to you. And right now, some breaking news. We're going to head over to Bethany Elsey.
Nana, thank you. Some breaking news in the last few minutes. 4 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have been injured in a shooting outside a funeral in North London. That's according to the Metropolitan Police. The incident happened on Phoenix Road in northwest London. Police say initial inquiries suggest the shots were fired from a moving vehicle, which then drove off from the scene. 3 women, aged 48, 54 and 41, were taken to hospital. Their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening. A 7-year-old girl had been taken to a central London hospital with injuries that are believed to have been sustained in the same incident, but her condition is currently unknown. Police say no arrests have yet been made. We'll bring you more updates on this when we get them.
So before we move to the break on the topic of Shamima Begum, speaking ahead of the release of the podcast, BBC journalist Josh Baker said there are different ways to tell the Shamima Begum story. There's the one about a 15-year-old schoolgirl who was groomed and lured to a war zone by ISIS and now needs saving from the Syrian detention camp. And there's the one about a traitor who fled Britain to join ISIS and became known the world over as a terrorist and must be stopped from coming back to Britain. As Shamima challenges the removal of her British citizenship by the UK government, I've examined her accounts to give listeners a definitive narrative on this complex, nuanced and shocking story. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for the Royal Roundup, where royal biographer Angela Levin and YouTube sensation, the body language guy Jesus Enriquez Rosas, will give us the latest on the fallout with Prince Harry. But first, we've got a short break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m on GB News, the People's Channel. Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. It's been a big old week for Harry, appearing on numerous interviews after releasing his new book, Spare. He even told The Telegraph that he has more still to come for a second book and that he has had to decide what not to put in it. Each Saturday, I always love to give you a rundown, so who better to delve into this than YouTube sensation, the body language guy, Jesus Enriquez Rosas even. He joins me now alongside Angela Levin. So, Jesus, thank you very much for joining me. Where is he? Is he here? Where's Jesus? Oh, there you go.
Hello,
Jesus.
Nana. Thanks for having me here.
Well, it's good to see you.
Well, this week has been flaming with Harry's Spare book, and the interviews of Tom Brady and Anderson Cooper have been a lot of insights on his body language. He looks very confident. It looks like he is sure about his putting in the book, and we already know what he had put in the book. So, well, this is a bit troubling. The two clips that I sent you that I would like to show to our beloved audience.
All right, well, should we get you the first clip now? Is this the interview with Prince Harry when he's discussing his sit-down with Oprah? Right, let's have a look at it.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well, of...
The British press said that.
Right.
Yes.
Well, this is funny because the first reaction is in fact Tom Bradby's. You see that he is startled, like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody knows that in the Oprah interview there was this accusation of the royal family as racist. And Harry's saying that, no, there was something made up by the British media. And then there's this confusion. And you can see that Harry has this smug face, like being proud that he is telling the story like it is. And this is something that narcissists do to get you off balance, like confuse your perception of reality. You know, everybody knows what we heard on that interview, on that Oprah interview. And now Harry's trying to rewrite the narrative using gaslighting directly to the face of Tom Bradby that obviously did not expect that answer.
He's thrown Tom Bradby under the bus. I mean, Tom Bradby sort of couldn't then ask, but I thought you said, because they're supposed to be sort of friends, and that wouldn't have looked good. I mean, well, we've got another clip. Now,
yes.
This is the interview when Harry mentions concerns regarding his child.
Meghan never mentioned that they're racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
there was concern
color.
about his skin colour.
Right.
So here, two things happened. That he says Meghan never said they were racist. And, well, technically, Harry is right. Not Meghan, not Harry said directly a royal family is racist, but that is not how language works. You can imply something, and, well, they actually received the Ripple of Hope Award thanks to their fighting the structural racism of the royal family. And so if they were not saying that, how do they accept that award? There's something that he's trying to describe everything. And another thing in this clip is that he says that they were talking about his skin color. He says he's implying Archie, but nobody has mentioned Archie yet. It looks like he had practiced this answer so many times. He knows that he knew that this question was going to pop up. So he practiced this answer so many times, so he almost answered automatically, said his skin color, and not saying Archie's skin color because Archie had not been mentioned yet. So you see that Harry looks quite a bit arrogant. His chin is a bit up. He has this contempt smile at times. I think he's very proud of what is inside the book. I don't think that someone else wrote. We know he had a ghostwriter. We can wonder how a ghostwriter made those lines of the frozen Todger and all that stuff. But Harry looks satisfied with what he's doing.
Well, it does look like that, doesn't it? Well, listen, Jesus, let's bring Angela Levin in on this, because Harry's been busy again in writing stuff and getting involved in the Daily Telegraph. So Angela, what is going on here?
Yes, I mean, it's very interesting because what he says in the Telegraph is that his big aim is to curtail totally the royal family having any connection with the press, and in that way he will save them. And he's saying that with the utmost hypocrisy because he had 3 full pages in the Telegraph today. So it means that it's fine for me, but not for you. I mean, it's an astonishing comment. I think he's now very dangerous towards the royal family. He can't be trusted, and he's blackmailing them by threatening that he will come up with another book where he's got another 400 pages that he could write, and this will really shock them.
Yeah.
And I think as well, his comment that he wants to take over bringing up Charlotte and Louis, the 2 who won't be the monarch, and so that they don't end up like him. And he admits that William has said to him, he's told me it's none of my business, but actually it's very frightening. And he's also said that I will forgive them if they sit down and chat and apologise to Meghan.
I know. I mean, Jesus, this is the Telegraph is a paper here in the UK, and basically Harry's written in there, and he said that he's going to forgive them. He was prepared to forgive them if they apologise. Is this classic narcissistic behaviour?
Yes, this is the way to spin completely 180 degrees the narrative. So it's like they make all these shenanigans, they do all this on the media, they do this with their actions, and they try to make it seem like it was you, the one that is guilty of all this. That is a classic narcissist tactic of spinning the narrative that you accuse them of something, and no, they spin it that way, of course, playing the victim. And that is something that Harry has been doing increasingly better every time.
Well, he has.
But yes, the thing is, you don't think he's playing victim now. He's being a bully. I mean, he said that if he goes to the coronation, it will be in the royal family's place to make the decision. But he will only do it if they sit down, if they go through everything, if they talk everything through. Now, that's a nonsense. They can't do that because he's probably got 3,000 complaints written down that he wants to go through. And if they say one thing, he's going to burst and do more and more and more and more. I mean, it's very difficult for the royal family, but I now think he is a danger, and they have to take care to protect themselves from his nonsense. He lives in California. How can he look after and manage the royal family? He couldn't anyway. But it's absolute drosh.
It is absolute dross. It really is. Well, listen, Jesus Enriquez Dross as the body language guy. People can find him on YouTube. He's a sensation. He's got so much out there. I love him. Jesus, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. So let's go back to you, Andrew. So what do you think then? So final thoughts then on this then. With regard to Harry, I
think he's, as I said before, I think he's very unwell. I think he's learning answers to questions and putting them there. I mean, at the end of his book, he says that he wasn't getting any redundancy money. Now, that's absolutely astonishing thing. It's in the last 2 or 3 pages. This is a Meghan comment, because she said, if you remember, soon after she went and did engagements, that she was astonished she wasn't paid for it. So they're thinking of the royal family like a company, and therefore, after he's served them for X years, he should do that. He also blames them for not giving him not letting him know how to be independent, and I think that's absolutely true.
Well, listen, Angela Levin, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to talk to you. That is royal biographer Angela Levin. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. More to come in the next hour. So good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. On the way, Major Michael Shearer who'll be talking about his time in the armed services, royals who serve in the army, and Prince Harry's behaviour. He apparently taught him and both William how to fire arms. That's all on the way. Then at 5:20, Boris Johnson's environmentalist dad, Stanley Johnson, and physicist engineer Brian Capp will join me in the studio, and I'll be asking, is net zero a scam? Do not go anywhere. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Metropolitan Police say 4 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have been injured in a shooting outside a funeral in northwest London. Initial inquiries suggest the shots were fired from a moving vehicle on Phoenix Road. 3 women, aged 41, 48 and 54, were taken to hospital. Their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening, but the 41-year-old has suffered life-changing injuries. A 7-year-old girl has been taken to hospital with injuries believed to have been sustained in the same incident, but her condition is currently unknown. Police say no arrests have been made, and we'll bring you more on this when we have it. In other news, the UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British Iranian national in Iran. Ali Reza Akbari was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Britain. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the sanctions underline the government's disgust at the killing, which Rishi Sunak has described as callous and cowardly. Meanwhile, Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in national security. A union representing ambulance workers has written to the Prime Minister saying they feel betrayed by attempts to paint them as uncaring. The GMB, which represents more than 10,000 ambulance staff, told Rishi Sunak he was demonising them over strike action. It comes after Mr Sunak told the Commons that industrial action was terrifying the public. Tory MP Lee Anderson told GB News the letter may not reflect the views of all workers.
There's a distinction here, Phil, and you know this, between ambulance drivers and ambulance unions. You know, I've spent times a shift with ambulance drivers, and they, you know, sometimes they tell me a different story to what the unions are telling them. It's about time we started listening to the ambulance drivers and the paramedics rather than the unions, who we know have got one single agenda, and that's to get rid of us.
Nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will now continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. RCN General Secretary Pat Cullen credits pressure from nurses as being key to negotiations. Rishi Sunak has spoken of his ambition to send a squadron of British tanks to help Ukraine take back territory lost to Russian forces. Speaking with President Volodymyr Zelensky this morning, he pledged to supply Challenger 2 battle tanks alongside additional artillery systems. The decision makes the UK the first Western power to supply main battle tanks to the country. Labour says they fully support the move. Plans to house 400 asylum seekers in a small village near Northampton have now been dropped by the Home Office. Residents had objected to using the 17th century Highgate House Hotel in Cretan, which has a population of just over 500. James Hill is the chairman of Cretan Parish Council. He told us why residents were against the scheme.
We're a village of 520 people, and the prospect of 400 people coming to live here without occupation or activities to keep them occupied, without proper access to local services, we felt that was unsustainable for us as a community and also for the local area.
Ministers are set to review guidance given to landlords who rent out social housing following the death of a 2-year-old boy. Awab Ishak died in December 2020 after developing a respiratory condition caused by mould. Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, which owned the flat, had previously advised his parents to paint over it. Michael Gove says every landlord in the country needs to ensure their tenants are housed in decent homes. Romanian authorities have seized luxury cars from Andrew Tate's property as part of a criminal inquiry into alleged human trafficking. Andrew and his brother, as as well as 2 Romanian women, were detained on charges of forming a criminal gang to sexually exploit 6 women. Earlier this week, the 4 suspects lost a legal challenge against their 30-day arrest. They've all denied any wrongdoing. And the government says single-use plastic plates and cutlery will be banned in England from October in a bid to curb the impact of plastic on the environment. England currently uses around 2.7 billion pieces of single-use cutlery every year, but only 10% is recycled. Repeated breaches of the new legislation could lead to retailers facing criminal charges. Dr. Christian Dunn, a senior lecturer at Bangor University, told us why the move is necessary.
Plastic doesn't break down, doesn't decompose, doesn't rot away. And what happens to it is it breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces of plastics, which then become microplastics or even nanoplastics. And now what we're seeing is those plastics are so small and they're being found everywhere. They're in the rain, they're in the air that we're breathing in, they're even in our blood.
You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Now, still to come in my difficult conversation today is with Major Mike Shearer. Now, he is a former career soldier and served in Germany during the Cold War, as well as in the Gulf, Cyprus, Bosnia and Northern Ireland. In 2006, he presided over the armoured wing at the gunnery school in Dorset, where he trained newly commissioned officers to use arms. Now, this is where Mike went, the Duke of Sussex, and described him as a fine young officer, but has now said that his revelation equates to treason. Then stay tuned, because coming up at 5:20, Boris Johnson's environmentalist dad Stanley Johnson and physicist engineer Brian Catt will go head-to-head in the studio. I'll be asking, is net zero a scam? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it is now time for this week's difficult conversation. Now, in his new book, Spare, Prince Harry admitted to killing 25 fighters during his time in Afghanistan while serving in the armed forces. He described those critics have said that his revelation has not only endangered the royal family, active soldiers, but the UK as a whole. Even the Taliban were quick to respond, saying that the ones who killed were not chess pieces. They were humans. They had families who were waiting for their return. So today, I'm joined now by Major Mike Shearer, who's a former career soldier that served in Germany during the Cold War, as well as in the Gulf, Cyprus, Bosnia and Northern Ireland. In 2006, he presided over the armoured wing at a gunnery school in Dorset, where he trained newly commissioned officers to use arms. Now, this is where Mike met the Duke of Sussex and described him as a fine young officer. But he's now said his revelation equates to treason. I'm pleased to say that Major Mike Shearer joins me live in the studio. Mike, thank you very much for joining me.
Delighted now.
So what is your role then? What do? You said you train officers to fight arms. Do you actually train directly, or?
Well, my instructors would do most of the work, but when the young cadets finish at Sandhurst and become officers proper, they then have to be farmed out to their respective trade branches. And for the cavalry and the household cavalry, when we're speaking about Harry, they need to then go and learn how to operate the machinery, in his case, a combat vehicle reconnaissance tract, so that they can go on and do their business.
So you didn't directly train Harry, but you had officers who you trained who trained Harry and William, is that right?
Well,
or did you actually?
For want of a better expression, I was the principal.
Okay, so you're in charge
of that part of it.
Right.
So I had reasonable contact with all the young officers, with all the soldiers that were going through their training throughout my period of time there.
And so you met Harry and William?
Yes, of course.
Talk to me, what was William like? Because everyone's talking about Harry, but what was William like?
William was studious and capable, personable, polite, mannered, and focused on what he was doing at the time.
And Harry?
Harry was fairly much the same, a bit more raucous. You know, he would get involved with the soldiers a bit more. He would play about and joke with them a bit more than his than his brother. But they were both fine young men.
Now, in Harry's book, he talks about, you know, he says that his number was 25, and he sort of likens them to pieces on a chessboard. Is that how you talk in the military about the enemy in a sense?
No, absolutely not. I mean, my good old friend Tim Collins, Colonel Tim Collins, SAS and Royal Irish Regiment, called him immediately on this. It is disgraceful behaviour. I've been in a number of conflicts where the enemy have met their end, and of course you fight hard. You know, that's what we're there to do. But as soon as the enemy is dead, they get the utmost respect. They are buried with due reverence in accordance with their laws and their religion. And there's no gloating. Quite frankly, there's no time for gloating. And to talk about soldiers, the Taliban, who are fighting for their cause, to speak about them as chess pieces that you just knock off a board, I'm bewildered that it would come to that.
Now, I mean, in Harry's defence as well, he didn't say that he was bragging in the book. He said he said his number. Is that something that people would do? Would people say their number? No,
there's no scoring like that. It's first of all, I don't even know how you would count that. You know, in my own tank in the Gulf War, there were a number of engagements on armour and in trenches. You know when you've had a kill, you know when you have, but there's no notching. It's just bad behaviour. There's no notching up anything on your rifle butt or anything like that.
And there's been a lot of criticism in terms that this could inflame the Taliban, obviously, and make this country a less safe country, and also potentially the coronation a target. Are those justified?
Well, look, Harry has been quite vocal about protecting his family, and that's fine. But then to come out with this revelation of 25 Taliban dead, he's probably a whisker away from a mufti putting a fatwa on him. So I would say he hasn't done himself or this country or other British members of the armed forces any favours at all.
And in your view, why do you think that he became so outspoken about all of this?
Heavens, I mean, this is difficult. But before we get to the why, I think it's worth just reminding people that every soldier gives an attestation, an oath, a solemn oath to the sovereign when they join the armed forces. Now, Harry, of course, is a member of the royal family, so you would think that that would mean something. It would appear now that he's completely railed against that oath. And remember, that oath is given in many occasions with the thought there's a divine presence witnessing it. And to rail against it in the way he has is, quite frankly, unbelievable. As to the why, heavens, who knows? All I could say is it would never have happened without him meeting Meghan Markle. That's my view on it.
And there's the people that served with him and alongside him, are they at risk in any way because he's disclosed the number? And obviously, you know, it wouldn't be difficult to work out who was around him and who...
I think he's just made the environment less safe for everybody that is in the armed forces and sadly, possibly for his own family.
It's very, very worrying indeed. So talk to me about what you're doing now. Are you still training soldiers, or where's your role come from?
No, I left the armed forces about 12 years ago, but still a bit involved. I just got back last week from Baghdad when I was helping the embassy there try and get the Ministry of Interior for the government of Iraq to understand the requirement to have a strategic take a strategic view on what they call rumours, but they mean disinformation, malinformation, and misinformation. So, I mean, I keep an eye on it all. I'm clearly interested in the geopolitical end of things, but no longer with the military, no.
In your view, what do you think with regard to the royal family? Do you think it will survive this latest onslaught from Prince Harry?
The royal family have survived for over a millennia, and of course they will survive this. I mean, they must be at their wit's end with the way in which Harry is behaving. If I was to give Harry any advice, I would go Latin on him and say, veritas vos liberabit, the truth, Harry, will set you free. And, the behaviour that he's demonstrating requires possibly some surgery in his head. For me, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. He needs to wise up. He needs to get a grip of himself and just remember where he came from and who he is and behave more accordingly.
Well, listen, Mike, it's lovely to talk to you. It's really, really interesting to meet you as well, because you've actually met them both and what you've done in your career. If there's one pearl of wisdom that you'd pass on to people, especially with the army the way it is now as well, would you have a pearl of wisdom you'd pass to people, especially might be people watching wanting to join the army?
Well, look, all the armed forces is a fantastic place for young men and women to go to. They imbue them with a sense of decency, with a whole set of values that will serve them throughout life. So for anybody that is thinking about the armed forces, I would absolutely applaud that. There is no greater service that anybody could do than go to the armed forces.
Well, listen, you also... and also with regard to Harry, let's be fair. He's probably trying to fix the situation that he believes. I doubt he needs any sort of surgery in terms of lobotomies and things like that. So, he's not here to defend himself. So we'll take that back. But the bottom line is something he needs to sort of try and fix things with his family.
Without a shadow of a doubt, he needs to be quiet, stop writing books, get on with his life. Remember, he walked away from his family and royal duties. That's his decision. I salute him if that's what he wants to do and get on and do that. But he's clearly very hurt about being a spare. Yeah. Well, I would say that for most people that would be good enough.
Well, I'd take that any day, spare to the heir of the throne. I'd be more than happy. I'd be like a princess. I'd take that. Major Mike Shearer, thank you very much for joining me. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you. Talk to you. That is Major Mike Shearer. He's a former military spokesperson. This is GB News. Coming up, it is the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is net zero a scam? Now, this comes as the rising cost of recharging electric vehicles has now surpassed the cost of petrol. Who knew that would happen? And when it comes to long-haul journeys, as well as the cost of net zero, it's now estimated to become double for households in Britain. Boris Johnson's environmentalist dad, Stanley Johnson, and physicist engineer Brian Catt will go head-to-head in the studio on this very issue after this, your weather.
Hello there, I'm Craig Snell, and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, after we lose the wind and rain today, a change is on the way. It's going to start to turn a good deal colder for all of us, with an increase in risk of snow, especially as we go into next week. Here's the situation, however, at the moment, still got low pressure dominating the British Isles and tightly packed isobars across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England, indicating some very windy weather still as we go through the rest of Saturday. Otherwise, as we go into tonight, a mixture of clear spells and showers for a lot of England and Wales. We do have this band of rain and hill snow just sinking its way into parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England as the night goes on. But for Scotland, it turns clearer, colder, risk of some further snow showers and also some ice on untreated surfaces. So overall, Sunday's going to be a cold day for all of us, really. We'll continue to track this band of rain and hill snow across England and Wales, weakening as it does so. Behind it, plenty of sunshine, still the risk of some wintry showers for Scotland and quite a keen wind here. So feeling very cold, highs struggling around 2 to 4 degrees here for the afternoon. Further south, around where we should be for the time of year, but certainly feeling a bit colder than what we have been used to. And then into the evening, we start to see bands of rain and showers moving in from the west. As it bumps into the colder air, we could see some sleet and snow, especially across parts of Wales and the Midlands. And then later on in the night, we're just keeping a very close eye on this band of rain. It may just move into parts of southeast England, even giving some sleet and snow to the high ground here by the end of the night. A cold night for all, especially for Scotland. Could even see lows down to -8 or -10 in a few spots. And then Monday itself, once we lose this rain, really it's a day of sunny spells and a few wintry showers. And that theme then continues into Tuesday and Wednesday. widespread frost by night and the further risk of some snow at times.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It is now time for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, is net zero a scam? An expert has revealed that the price of reaching net zero will cost households at least double the amount estimated in the government review. Former Science Minister Chris Skidmore produced a report which said that households, the transition to a net zero home could save between £400 and £6,000 through buying electric cars and replacing boilers, but only after spending around about £4,000 to £6,000 on improving their homes, environment and their environmental standards. However, David Rayner, who is an assistant director of the University of Cambridge's Energy Policy Research Group, said the costs to households are likely to be at least double as the report figures. So this comes as the cost of topping up an electric car for a long-haul journey is now nearly £10 more expensive than filling a car with petrol, and that is according to the RAC. The cost of charging an electric car has increased by 58% since May. And despite fight back from South London Council Sutton Liberal Democrats, Sadiq Khan remains adamant to expand his ultra-low emission zones across all 32 London boroughs, with the most polluting vehicles requiring to pay £12.50 per day to drive in the capital. So, for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is net zero a scam? Joining me live in the studio, engineer and physicist Brian Catt and ambassador for the Conservative Environment Network and former MEP Stanley Johnson. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Stanley. Net zero, a lot of people questioning it and saying it's going to be way too expensive and the cost will outweigh the benefit. Is it, in your view, a scam?
Well, I say to myself, net zero 2050 is a very long way away, and I am much more attracted as an extra target to have what the EU, by the way, is going for at the moment, which is at least reductions of 55% by 2030, because it's this very decade we are in where the crucial action has to be. So far from net zero being a scam, I'd say net zero 2050 is actually not energizing enough, because we ought to be focusing also on the near term. No, it's not a scam. It's tremendously important. And you mentioned Chris Skidmore. That man is a good man. And by the way, he was one of the first people to come out, as I recall, supporter of Liz Truss. Liz Truss didn't have the best possible innings, but she did set up his report, and he has produced his report, and I have looked at all 364 pages of it, and it is going down the right direction. Going down the right direction because we are now at a time, Nana, where it's fine having all these targets. Targets are desperately important, but unless you can actually show how you're going to get from A to B, you may as well not have the targets at all. And what Skidmore has done is to give us some real good guidance as to how to get from A to B.
But some of the moves towards net zero, for example, so electric vehicles, and they're more expensive now. They're filling a petrol car, and also the carbon footprint of an electric vehicle is huge. You know, and what can it do? 70,000 miles, and then by the time you need to replace it, it hasn't even really put back in the carbon that it's taken out, or vice versa. You know, we're not getting anywhere. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Yeah, but the costs are there. But what you've got to think about is what is the cost of not going down this route? Do you see what I mean? We have to contemplate, really, the costs of the scenarios we have if we don't get where we're trying to get. We have to do that internationally as well.
Well, let's get Brian Catt in on this then.
Well, just following on from the conversation rather than what I might have been going to say, the amount of change that we're expecting to see is tiny. We're talking about fractions of a degree that anything the UK does can actually make to the massive effect around the whole world that's required. You're looking at, I think the number the IPCC, using the IPCC's numbers, we'd have to spend £1 trillion for each millionth of a degree that the climate is changed by. So there's virtually no benefit to be had by spending, well, at the moment we're spending about 20 billion per annum directly that's imposed by law that we needn't otherwise spend, that could be spent productively rather than wastefully on things like heat pumps and electric cars. And about 60 billion indirectly is the number that I have. So why would we be spending all that money? Not because we want to, but because we're told to by law. It's behavioural change, which means we'll make a law to tell you.
I've got to say, Mike, lovely to be here with you. But honestly, you are talking out of your head. Well, you really are. The money which was promised in Paris in 2015 was $100 billion a year. That was a target which they had to get to. Do you know how much we spent dealing with COVID? We spent $400 billion on dealing with COVID. And there you might well have a question. If you were sceptical about COVID, I'd be with you all the way. Now, the point is, the money is actually nothing like what you were saying. The money is doable. It's a tiny fraction what needs to be spent. And if you look at the program, which, for example, the Climate Change Committee has set out, the carbon budget is absolutely achievable. On your point, we're only a tiny part. Well, of course we're only a tiny part because we're not just one country. But link us in, for example, with the 27 countries of the EU who have a very good strategy as well. Bring us together on that, and we are a significant player. We're not as big as America, we're not as big as China, but we're probably a third in the row.
Well, China's going to double its emissions from 11 gigatons to 22 gigatons between now and 2030, and they emit, what, 20 times more than we do? So our effect is going to be effectively nothing, immeasurable.
We are part of a wider group of nations, and together we are by no means immeasurable. And even in China, bear in mind where China came from. China came from a very low level of development. We got to that low level. We got past that low level 100 years ago. China has every right to develop its country, and it is exacting using that right. And if you actually look at the per capita emissions from China, they are also.
But what's the point, though? But what's the point, though? Because as Brian pointed out, the difference that it will make in terms of the climate, if it does even make anything, will be marginal, like tiny.
It won't be marginal, Nana. It won't at all be marginal if the EU and the Western countries work together. If America joins in, if China joins in, there will be scope then for some developments in the developing world, which they basically have earned and basically need. And we will keep on the pathway for, if it's not 1.5, it's certainly less than 2 degrees.
Right. All I would say is that in order to be a developed economy, you need to have cheap, plentiful energy. If you make your energy expensive and rationed, by meters or smart meters or whatever it is, you are heading straight back to where China's trying to come from. It's dead simple. And that's what's happened in our economy. That's why our economy is going into backward reverse gear really fast.
Well, Mike, I don't know whether you've been looking at the figures over the last few weeks. Yep. The percentage of energy coming from wind power has been very high over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and it's also been lower. The duty cycle is about 29% for wind power, and it can't get much higher because if you try to put intermittent power at any higher level on the grid, it can't work.
We always start ending up by talking technicalities. We all know it's a mixture of sources of energy which you're trying to put on the market, and obviously renewables is one key one. But another thing which Skidmore picked up on in a very big way was the need to push hard on the nuclear front, and I agree with that. There was
totally agree with that. It should all be nuclear.
Yeah, and not only that, he pushes for what's called modular nuclear.
Which is sort of, the point is, we violently agree on that. The point about nuclear was, if you want, well, not is, if you want to get there quickly, you need to buy the third generation stuff from South Korea and Westinghouse, which is where everybody else in the world is going, until we've got...
But ultimately, this is going to cost a fortune, this whole net zero movement. People don't have the money right now to do all this. So,
well, of course.
And actually, the difference doesn't seem like it's not making much of a difference. It feels like some of the things we're doing are almost a backward step. So, you know...
I take your point totally. Basically, what's going to happen? I got into trouble on this programme before saying what's going to happen is going to be sector-by-sector targets. There will be sector-by-sector targets, and there'll be some targets which will be the energy sector, and within that energy sector there'll be the household sector. And there will be cases where certainly the government will want to be paying for different forms of heat in the households, different forms of insulation, that kind of thing. That is what government expenditure is going to be needed for.
Last word to you, Brian.
Really, I don't think that the government should be in the business of imposing solutions on people that they would not normally choose to buy with their own money.
So in your view, is net zero a scam?
Yes.
And Stanley, final word, is net zero a scam, yes or no?
It is absolutely not a scam.
It's absolutely not a scam. Well, what do you think at home? Thank you so much to engineer and physicist Brian Catt and ambassador for the Conservative Environment Network and former MEP Stanley Johnson. Thank you very much for joining me. They're still chatting. Right, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Peggy says net zero is a total scam, 100%. Sean says it is a con and a scam to the working class. John says biggest scam ever, net zero for the working class will be the only outcome. Well, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is net zero a scam? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Sam Dowler and Lizzie Cundy. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 5:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Metropolitan Police say 4 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have been injured in a shooting outside a funeral in northwest London. Initial inquiries suggest the shots were fired from a moving vehicle on Phoenix Road. 3 women aged 41, 48 and 54 were taken to hospital. Their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening, but the 41-year-old has suffered life-changing injuries. A 7-year-old girl has been taken to hospital with injuries believed to have been sustained in the same incident. Her condition is currently unknown. Police say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British Iranian national in Iran. Ali Reza Akbari was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Britain. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, described the action as callous and cowardly. Meanwhile, Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in national security. Well, James Cleverly says the government is treating the Iranian government's actions very seriously.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
A union representing ambulance workers has written to the Prime Minister saying they feel betrayed by attempts to paint them as uncaring. GMB, which represents more than 10,000 ambulance staff, told Rishi Sunak he was demonising them over strike action. It comes after Mr Sunak told the Commons that industrial action was terrifying the public. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good afternoon, welcome on board. This is GB News. It's just gone 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. And it's time now for our Great British Debate This Hour. And I'm asking, is net zero a scam? Former Science Minister Chris Skidmore produced a report which said, oh, I almost went with that, which said that households that transition to a net zero home could save between £400 and £6,000 through buying electric cars, right, yes, and replacing their boilers. But that is only after spending around about £4,000 to £6,000. So if you work that out, it nets zero. Yeah, that's on improving their homes and environmental standards. However, David Rayner, who is the Assistant Director of the University of Cambridge's Energy Policy Research Group, said that the costs to households are likely to be at least double as the report figures. And this comes as the cost of topping up the electric car for long-haul journeys is nearly £10 more expensive now than filling your petrol car. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is net zero a scam? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by broadcaster and journalist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, I'm going to start with you, Lizzie. Is net zero a scam?
Yes, it is a scam, Nana. Don't nod your head, Sam, at me.
That was a shake of my head.
It is a total scam. It's the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer. Where do we want to start with this? The electric car, let's go with. God. I mean, it costs an absolute fortune. They are pushing and pushing this electric cars, and it's more money to buy, but to go on a long journey, it costs you far more to do this than it does on unleaded. We have to, what is this? We're now having no gas boilers in 10 years. We're all going to have a heat pump, which is going to cost us up to £4,000 to £6,000 a household. I mean, how is this? It might be great for Rishi or for the Mayor of London who can afford it, but not the everyday person cannot afford this. It is a total con, and it's not going to make a blind bit of difference, because you look at our carbon emissions, which is 1%. Go and look at China. Look at India. China produces 29.8%. United States 14%. India 7.9%. And China, we can't even get round a table to talk.
Yeah, but
so it won't make a difference, Sam.
But it's a childish argument to say, well, they're not doing it, so we shouldn't.
But it's a global issue.
It's a global issue that is going to bring humanity to its knees. I mean, climate change is not a joke. It's not a joke. Like, you know, like, and affects the poorest people in the whole world. So, like, us bitching about, like, of course, you know, some things like electric cars are going to be more expensive, etc. But, like, you know, we're in a period of transition. Like, in my mind, they should be like, you know, like, square miles of solar panels in the Sahara Desert could solve the world's energy crisis like tomorrow. Well, like this is so important. I'm not saying I agree with anything like Extinction Rebellion ever did, etc. But like they do have a point. We will, or like it's not to do with us. It's not to do with us. It's about our grandkids who will have to suffer the consequences.
Well, hang on. That depends on whether. Now, listen, climate change is happening, but the climate will change in any case. Whatever we do is a moving, living thing. Is the planet.
Something pumping like fossil fuels into the atmosphere, destroying the ozone layer.
Yeah,
Do you think that's made any difference?
But the ozone layer, they got that wrong, didn't they? Because it's not disappeared. It's still there, and they got the coral reefs wrong as well. Look, one thing that Brian Catt has said many times to me is that there's something called feedback. So if you take out the carbon dioxide, what does it have? What is the outcome? What is the ricochet that happens from there? And that's the thing that they don't appear to be calculating. So we may need the levels of carbon dioxide that we need. What feeds off the carbon dioxide? And that is humanity itself. So I think that we don't fully understand. I don't think anyone does. There's no scientist that could tell me they fully understand the whole thing, because I wouldn't believe it. And I think that sometimes you don't think of the reaction after an action. And I think we need to be very careful, because the planet needs carbon dioxide, and there are some things that we're going to take away. We're going to put something in their place that are worse, and that's what I believe in electric cars. You're taking away fossil fuels, OK, fine. You're going to put in electric cars, but you're currently using the electricity for the electric car from fossil fuels. Right now, that's what they're doing. And there's now more and more people buying these cars, and they're using more energy.
And the batteries are toxic.
Everybody's now using electricity, and it's all mostly from fossil fuels. You cannot store it.
But as I said, we're in a period of transition. Technology is moving on, like at a massive rate, and obviously, like getting rid of, for example, the garbage that we produce, like, you know, finding ways to turn that into energy. Like we have to be led by the science, and science. And like for example, like there's massive leaps in nuclear fusion, which would solve the entire world's energy crisis tomorrow if they solved it. And this it's so important.
Our electricity here is 50% more expensive than France, Germany,
thanks to Brexit, I would
America, Australia, double. And we need to continue to import oil.
He blamed it on Brexit.
Oh, here we go.
Let's not worry about the war in Ukraine, or let's forget about the expense that we put in towards COVID, where some people would have gone for longer and harder, like your friend Keir Starmer. Where we'd be in a mire now. Yeah, we'd be in the mire if these lot were in charge, let's be honest.
Exactly.
And actually, the people voted for Brexit. It was a majority. It's democracy. That's how we do things in this country.
Well, I mean, sorry. I don't want to talk about Brexit.
Well, you brought it up.
We are like, I mean, obviously the people did vote for Brexit.
I'm sure
however, it was such a fine line that I believe that the lies that were told could have pushed it over the other way if they weren't allowed.
So what you're saying is the British public is so stupid that we can't see through things that weren't true, both on Remain and...
Sadly, the Tories didn't really genuinely want it with Rishi, because I just don't think they seriously wanted Brexit. That's why it hasn't worked as it was planned.
Well, it hasn't worked, has it? You just admitted that it hasn't worked, Lizzie.
Brexit isn't working, and it will work, but Rishi needs to pull his finger out and do it the right way.
And also, you're fighting against people who wanted to get their vote and win, and they didn't get it, so they are literally scuppering every single opportunity. And you saw it even when we tried to actually Brexit. There were people within the same party and other parties still trying to come up with ways where they could collude so that they could then upturn the vote. So far, all we've got is negativity from people who don't want it to work, to prove that we should have remained. And frankly, the way the EU behaved, especially during the COVID pandemic, where they tried to stop suppliers from coming to this country,
that was disgusting.
suppose you remember that. And the fact that we were able to move further.
And we don't have to go through 36 other countries to get a policy through. And thankfully we have got the vaccine rollout thanks to not being in the EU.
If it was working, I think it's very cynical to believe that people that didn't want Brexit to happen would try and sabotage. would try and sabotage.
They would
sabotage our own country and make us all worse off just to be correct.
You would think, but unfortunately, it would appear to be the case.
We really have to continue to. I mean, we continue to import our own oil, our gas, coal.
But oil is finite. Oil is finite. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's the end. That's the end of it.
Actually, you may say that, but there may be some supplies that we haven't found, and there may be something else that we find is better. You dig deep.
Exactly.
Right, well, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing today. I've got 4 of you. Wonderful. Right, let's start with Seshni Mudia in Milton Keynes. Seshni, what do you think? Is net zero a scam?
Good evening, Nana. Thank you for having me on. No, I don't think net zero is a scam. And whether people believe it is a scam or not, it is really important. Achieving net zero is there to reduce global warming, amongst many other important reasons. We need to think about the future of our planet, our children and their children, and the planet that we're going to leave them with. In terms of global warming, Nana, there's lots of effects of global warming, as you know, raising the temperature of the world, the oceans, looking at getting loss of species, animal species, also looking at poverty, mental health, and not there's
also,
so many effects of global warming.
And looking at a fortune that it's going to cost us. Thank you very much for that, Seshni. Let's go to Elizabeth. She's there in Hevering. Elizabeth Hevering, sorry, in Cheshire. Sorry, Elizabeth. You're a new voice. Welcome. I did that nicely. Poor Elizabeth. Elizabeth, welcome. Welcome. What do you think?
Thank you. I think the idea that net zero is a con really depends. Things like renewable energy, for example, is quite important. It allows for self-sufficiency. It places our industries and our people first. And it allows us to be self-sufficient against global chains, which might be affected by wars like we saw last year with Ukraine. But of course, there's the issue of, well, if we're going to transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, we also have to take the workers into account who may be displaced and so on. So we should retrain them and replace them back into these new industries. But a big issue with the idea of net zero is electric cars. They're not great. They're quite useless, quite frankly. They're bad for the environment. They rely on precious metals that are hard to mine and are mined by literal children in third world countries. And they are also expensive. The average low-income household cannot afford an electric car. And they're also only really sufficient in cities. And they don't really work if you go out in the countryside and so on. A better alternative, arguably, would be vintage cars. If we return to tradition, modern cars.
Well, I like that. Well, listen, thank you very much. Brilliant first time. Gosh, she's good. You're good. Thank you very much. Right, let's go to Jonathan Jones. He's there in Cornwall. Tregotham tea. He's got a cup of tea. There it is. I knew it. Jonathan, what do you think? Is it a scam?
No,
is it a rip-off?
No, the thing is with a scam, it suggests that someone's organising it, and I think it's more of a cock-up than that. Doesn't seem that well coordinated. But I think I disagree with Sam on this, because I would say I'm an eco-warrior, tree hugger as much as anyone. In fact, I took your point earlier, Nana, that the counting isn't right. The sums just don't add up. And if you think, like, the whole carbon counting thing is a complete Wild West, if you talk to scientists about this, they'll agree. And, for example, just take trees, which is my pet thing, if you like. We don't even know how many trees there are or where they are. And how can you assess carbon and do real analysis if you don't even know that basic fact? So I'd love to pick this up with Sam and talk later about that.
Well, we will. Sam will do that. He'll pick that up with you at some point. I love that, Jonathan. Right, lastly, let's go to Alan McNeely. He's there in Grimsby. Al, what do you think? Is it a scam?
Good afternoon, Nana.
Good afternoon.
Yes, a lot of it is a scam, I think, Nana, to be quite honest. The idea that if we become net zero in the UK, that we are going to in any way affect the outcome of the climate in the entire world is total and utter nonsense when everyone else is racing ahead to get as much built and as many fossil fuels used as absolutely possible, what's going to happen is what a number of people have said is the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get very, very poor. And Stanley Johnson, who you had on earlier, Nana, if you remember last time he was on, his premise was that you're not going to be able to drive, you're not going to be able to fly, and you're not going to be able to eat meat because eating meat damages the planet. There's too many cows. And you can see this madness starting to spread across the continent. In Ireland, the government are buying and killing cattle. In the Netherlands, they're closing down farms.
No, really? No, I don't know. Is that true? I'll have to check that out, Alan. Alan, thank you very much. Alan in Grimsby. Jonathan in Cornwall. It is it? Elizabeth in Cheshire, Session in Milton Keynes, thank you so much. My great British voices would be in the course, but we killed them to eat them anyway. Panel, very briefly, net zero, is it a scam, yes or no?
Absolutely a scam.
Not at all, no.
Right.
And can I just say, wish you should do that. Go and get that private jet. Hypocritical.
Right, well, it's time now for our quick fire quiz. It's the top part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other topics that are hitting the headlines right now. I'm joined by broadcast from columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, press your buzzer, please. And also, it just says Sam Dowler. OK, Sam, press your buzzer. Political commentator. Right, OK, let's start. You at home, please play along. Right, question one. Thousands of passengers took to the tube wearing nothing but their pants to celebrate the No Trousers Tube ride. But where did this strange tradition begin? Was it A, in Munich, B, New York, or C, Tokyo? Oh, I think that was... Oh, I don't know. Who's the first? Was it you, Lizzie? Lizzie?
It's a guess. B.
B. Sam, what do you think?
If anyone knows about taking trousers off, it's Lizzie. I would say...
How dare you?
Munich.
A. The answer is B. New York.
No.
Right, yes, the event began in 2002 and has spread to more than 60 countries around the world. Would you take part, Lizzie?
Oh, definitely.
See? Yes.
Yeah, I'd do it as well, actually, as it goes. Right, question two. Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, was released this week and became the UK's fastest-selling non-fiction book ever. But how many copies were sold on the first day? Closest answer wins. Lizzie?
1,400.
1,400?
Yeah. 40,000.
40,000.
I would say 500,000.
500,000. 400,000. You had the 4 right, but 1 too few zeros, sadly.
You won that.
I nearly said 400,000.
So it was. So hopefully somebody that there's totting up the scores. In the lead up to the book release, extracts were leaked to the press, which caused a massive hype around Harry's autobiography, which actually seeped out the best bits, which saved a lot of people from buying it. The book revealed intimate details about the royal family, including a physical altercation where with his older brother, Prince William. Let's see who's got the book. Lizzie, you've got the book?
No, I have not got the book and I will not be buying it.
I acquired it, but I didn't buy it. What about you, Sam?
No, it gives me too much anxiety. I don't want to read it.
I can't be bothered.
And all the juicy bits are out anyway.
I acquired it and I couldn't read it. No.
But I do think a lot of it has been said...
Question 3, and then we'll do 1 minute per question, please. Thank you. The Australian Open is set to begin on Monday. Tennis star Novak Djokovic will be allowed to participate in this year's tournament after he was deported last year due to the vaccination status. But how many Australian titles has he won? Was it A, 9, B, 12 or C, 6? Sam?
I'm going for 9.
9.
I'm going to say 12.
12. Let's see if
he's amazing.
But it's going to be 6. No, it's 9. Lizzie,
I know my tennis, darling. I know my tennis.
Very good. Yes, Djokovic's won 9 Australian Opens, 21 Grand Slams overall. The Serbian tennis star returned to Australia last week for the first time since being deported and received a warm welcome from Australia, faced some of the strictest coronavirus rules in the world. Right, let's see. Question 4, true or false? No, we have 5 questions. A 90-year-old lorry driver from South Yorkshire has been cleared to drive for another year by doctors. True or false? Lizzie?
I'm going to say no. False.
Yeah.
I'm going to say true.
Lovely. True. Let's see. The answer is true. Wow. Yes, it is. Well done. Brian Wilson is the UK's oldest HGV licence holder who's been on the road for more than 70 years. Brian has said when he retires he would like to spend some time in Thailand. So will you be driving in Thailand?
Driving with Daisy? Well, I hope so. I mean, I really do. I'll be on that...
I think that people over 70 should have to take another test.
Yeah, I think they should.
Oh, my mother would really not like you, Sam.
Well, tough luck, isn't it, unfortunately?
No, they should be. I think you should take a test at 65, and then I think at that point you should take one every year.
Yeah.
Right, well, on today's show, I've been asking, are the BBC wrong to give Shamima Begum a podcast? And according to our Twitter poll, 93% of you say yes, 7% of you say no. Thank you so much. My panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Thank you, Lizzie. And also political commentator Sam Dowell. Thank you very much, Sam. And also a huge thank you to you for joining me at home. It's always a pleasure. I'll be back at 4 tomorrow to discuss the top stories with broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly and GB News presenter Andrew Pearce, so you won't want to miss out. But I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Hello there, I'm Craig Snell, and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, after we lose the wind and rain today, a change is on the way. It's going to start to turn a good deal colder for all of us, with an increase in risk of snow, especially as we go into next week. Here's the situation, however, at the moment. Still got low pressure dominating the British Isles and tightly packed isobars across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England, indicating some very windy weather still as we go through the rest of Saturday. Otherwise, as we go into tonight, a mixture of clear spells and showers for a lot of England and Wales. We do have this band of rain and hill snow just sinking its way into parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England as the